Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Fly The Coop. We are here today with Chad Jeske. Chad, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Real Producers. You are the brains of that organization and publication, and I'm so excited to learn more about what you're doing out there and how you are engaging with our real estate community in the Twin Cities. Welcome, Chad.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So, Real Producers was a concept that our company came up with in 2015.
Okay.
There were a couple of things that we were noticing. Number one, there was a significant disconnect or spectrum of who was selling and who wasn't selling. Mm-hmm. In other words, there were a lot of people with a real estate license, but only a small percentage of people with a real estate license were earning a living because they had a license.
It's true.
And on top of it, we noticed that there were a lot of vendors out there that were dependent on realtor relationships, people that are in title, lending, home inspections, et cetera.
It's a lot, yeah.
And they, being dependent on those relationships, they had all these methods of trying to meet real estate agents. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of those methods were simply ineffective because of the math and because they were trying to meet people in a relationship-based industry without building a relationship. So
true. You're absolutely right.
I always pick on the example that I give a lot of people where I met a home inspector one time and I said, do you ever do anything to try and meet real estate agents? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, give me an example. He said, I pick up a dozen donuts every Monday and I stop by a real estate office. And I said, great. Do you ever meet real estate agents? And he said, I do. And I said, do you ever meet real estate agents that sell more than $15 million a year? And he said, not really. Mm-hmm. And I said, do you know why? And he had no idea why. And I just summed it up by saying, well, number one, top performing agents don't hang out at their office. Number two, they don't take sporadic meetings. They're too busy for that. And number three, what are you gonna do when you hand them the donuts and then you find out he or she is gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free?
Right.
Now who are you to them? Are you the person that's coming to the table with solutions or confusion? It's
brilliant.
So there are a lot of dead ends, for people that are out there. So we came up with a platform which was designed to elevate the businesses of top performing real estate agents. But in order for us to do that, there had to be a certain set of rules, which I'll elaborate on in a second. But the question I get a lot is, gosh, Chad, how do you meet someone who's doing $15 million a year in real estate and have any level of influence to get them to $50 million a year?
Right.
Because I've never sold $50 million a year. I can't teach them.
Right.
But the answer is pretty simple. Put them in a room full of people that sell $50 million a year.
Absolutely right.
We utilize a lot of psychology, basic psychology, like power of proximity. We become the average of the people we surround ourselves with. Mm-hmm. And, when people are allowed to meet, build real rapport, not off of, oh, well, you're a realtor, I'm an inspector, we should do business together.
Right.
It's not based on that. It's, well, I'm from Mitchell, South Dakota.
Yeah, I am.
Our kids go to school together.
Right.
Right. There are common interests, beliefs, values, etc. So by putting people in proximity of each other, they meet, they build rapport, they share off each other's energy, they share off each other's wisdom. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more market awareness.
Absolutely.
I was an agent and I left real estate about 17 years ago. And one of the things that I realized is that nobody was going to teach me how to do this.
Right.
And the only way I was able to figure it out was by putting myself in proximity of other people that were already successful at it.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Especially in this business. Absolutely. I think that's the case really with many things in life, really, truly. But fundamentally, you do need to have an innate passion and respect for and empathy for what this business really is. And it's massive life transition.
Absolutely.
all factions of it. And to be truly successful in that, there's got to be that core understanding of the business. And you only amplify that and perfect the ability to be a top producer by putting yourself around those successful humans out there that really have it figured out. I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely. And it's once you figure it out, it's simple. Because it really comes down to sow the same seeds, reap the same rewards. There are a lot of speakers that talk about this. I'll mention Tony Robbins here for a second.
Yep, love Tony.
He talks about power of proximity, and he talks about reading autobiographies. And it's basically, you can learn from another person without having to invest the blood, sweat, and tears,
right?
Just based on their experience.
Absolutely.
And you can literally skip steps. And there are a lot of agents that are out there. The last time I looked, I believe there's over 20,000 people with a real estate
22,000.
Yeah, in the state.
4,000 entries in just the past year.
It's a lot. And I get it, right? On the news, everybody's like, oh, real estate, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of barriers of entry. Let's face it. It's not a lot of money, and it's not a lot of time studying and taking tests to get a real estate license.
Right.
But none of that stuff teaches you how to do it. So the advantage of putting people around other successful, like-minded, like-performing people is there's more market awareness. There's less sales posturing, rather than, I don't know what this agent's trying to get from us, but we're gonna counter offer this. Rather than that type of approach, it's good news, everybody. This is a friend of mine. I'm going to tell him we want the stools, and we're all going to go to bed happy. Right? It's literally like that. It's doing business with friends.
Right.
And the only reason why it works is because it's a relationship-based industry, and all of that is based on relationships. I used to always wonder, who are these agents that sell millions of dollars before homes even hit the market? It's like, well,
relationships.
That's the answer. It's always that.
It's connecting the dots.
I love that. And being when I started working with real producers, there are a couple of friends of mine, business owners, that were saying things like, Chad, one of your rules is you focus on and you only work with top producing agents. Is that really a good idea? Aren't those people difficult? Aren't they high maintenance? Aren't they rude to each other, kind of chippy and things like that? And I always say, well, human beings, there's always going to be a percentage of people like that. But,
right, that's human nature. There's a percentile, and there's so many that are not.
Well, what I've found is a majority of top producing agents did not get to where they're at being this rude, cutthroat negotiator or anything like that. They got that way because they are some of the kindest, most gratitude-driven people, most resourceful people for these clients. And that's the draw. And because people always ask me, they're like, well, wait a minute, this person's not the most experienced. This person, isn't the fastest and stuff like that. It's like, well, why are you working with them? Why are you working with them? It comes down to the relationship and just the experience overall. People don't have to self-promote if they do a good job.
That's absolutely
where
right.
the mouth kicks in. So people are drawn to agents not because they're the loudest, not because they see a bunch of ads or billboards or anything like that. They're drawn to them for alternate reasons.
Absolutely. And there's not there are a lot of different personalities out there that need to be served and need to be supported and helped. And not all people are the right size for all people. There's a lot of need out there in this industry. And there's a lot of opportunity for growth and for expansion and to do a beautiful book of business and do it really, really well, if that's what you really want and you're super committed to it, and appreciate at the end of it, at the beginning of it, is the relationship.
Yep.
So going back to fundamentally what Real Producers is, how was it created? What is it here in the state of Minnesota and locally? And what does it mean?
So In 2015, we initially launched Indianapolis,
Okay.
and it started picking up some steam throughout that year. Friends of mine were launching it in places like Raleigh, North Carolina. We call it the Triangle and stuff like that.
Right.
And, someone tapped me on the shoulder in 2016, 2017. The company I was working for, I was running kind of a national development role.
Okay.
So we were analyzing different products and ideas and platforms and stuff like that. And I was at the barn, is what we call it. One of our founders is a farm kid from Tennessee, calls everybody Shindig, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had purchased a farm out in Elgin, Illinois, and he had turned the barn into kind of a retreat center.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah, you guys would definitely be able to exchange some ideas and conversations. And he's done this more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So he invited a bunch of people to come out there, probably like 25 of us. And the conversation was about, how do we process $1 million in business next year, individually? And I was there partially because of my role. I wasn't very engaged in the conversations because personally I had no intentions of trying to do what they were talking about. And
Okay.
a friend of mine came up to me and he says, "What do you think of all of this?" And that friend, by the way, had already hit that goal a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, it sounds like a great idea. It's just, in order for me to do that, I would have to open at least a couple more businesses in order to match those numbers.
Right.
And he looked at me and he said, or you could get involved in real producers.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what he meant at that time, but he knew me well enough to know my background and kind of a numbers guy. I always say I'm not great at math, but I like math because it reveals truth.
Right.
And I went home and I started doing math.
Mm-hmm.
And I became more and more interested in it when I found out what it was.
Right.
So in 2018, I launched Twin Cities Real Producers, and it's been a huge blessing. Most of my business attention has been put on Real Producers, and people ask me all the time, "Why do you do it?" The short answer is, I love how it makes people feel.
Right.
If it wasn't real, if it wasn't effective, I would lose interest.
Right.
Nobody wants to hide from what they do for a living or apologize for how they carry each other,
Right.
carry the conversations and things like that. So I just, it was a blessing in disguise, and it was a far cry from what I went to school for. I'm supposed to be in music management. I'm
Wow.
supposed to be in psychology.
Who knew that?
Yeah. A couple of people know that.
That's awesome.
But, in the mid 90s, I was at my college computer lab, and something called Napster came out, and I just kind of had a heart to heart with myself. And I was like, well, wait a minute, there's no more money in music. So is that really what you're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, no, I'm going to go get my real estate license.
Cool.
And that's how I got into real estate. But going back to, what is Real Producers? We came up with this platform. That was kind of the foundation or the why behind it. But the question is, well, how do you work with arguably some of the busiest people that are out there,
Yeah.
and get them to participate in this? And, they don't have time to just meet people, Chad. What are we doing? So we, the way we connect people is we have a social publication that we do once a month where we talk about different agents, and we take a glimpse into their personal lives and stuff that we believe is them.
Right. Right.
We, not to sound disrespectful, we don't talk a lot about the trophy case because nobody cares.
Right. They don't. They want to know about the people.
They do, because that's more relatable, and that's what the relationship is going to be based on. So we do a social publication. One of our rules is we don't do this for everybody. And the reason why is because of those stats we were talking about.
Right.
22,000 people with a license. Arguably, what is it? It's somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000 are running around the 7-county metro.
Right.
Honestly, every time I look at those numbers, they shift, not even just a little bit. It's like, wait a minute, is that 2,000?
Yeah, I know.
But the fact is, a majority percentage of the transactions and volume go through a very small percentage of agents.
That's true. It always has been true.
So
always.
The hard copy of the social publication, I pay to have designed, printed, and distributed to the top 500 agents that are in the Twin Cities. And that's not based on opinions. It's based on the numbers.
Right.
We get access to a lot of data, or data is sent to me, and I'm not hacking a system or anything like that. And we put it all in a spreadsheet, and we weed out the things that don't make sense. Like, oh, this agent's actually in Rochester. That's not our market. Or this is actually a mega team. We know that person did not sell all of those transactions.
Right.
And after we weed all that stuff out and cross-reference, we feel we come up with a pretty transparent list of who were the top performers last year.
Right.
So we have hard copies that go out. We have digital copies that go out to X number of agents. One of our rules is real estate agents can't advertise in our platform. You can't give me money to do an article on you.
Right. It's kind of defeating the whole purpose of the premise behind.
It would wreck the authenticity. Right. Absolutely. And I get it. There are pay to play models out there, and there's people we know that are like, hey, I gave this person a couple grand. They put me on the cover of a magazine.
There's a whole lot of that going on out there.
Well, that's kind of wrecked the publication industry.
Right.
In my opinion.
I agree with you.
And people are now skeptical of everything they read.
What is real?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, fundamentally, what is real? And getting back down to the very basics of what, I can't say it enough, the relationships and the organic component of what this is really about. It's, I think, a unique business model these days to find a company that fully believes and is grounded in the organic relationship. Because the social media component, we were just talking about this, has been such a power play in both good and bad ways. I'm not, downing it at all. I think it's a very necessary part of growth with where our world is going right now. Saying that, finding balance in organic relationships and not just paid lead generation where you're throwing money at different platforms, if you will, to gain those relationships in that manner, that's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely.
And depending on where you're at in the country, I think the Midwest personally is a fairly grounded grassroots kind of environment. And there's a huge appreciation for those relationships. This is a very, I call it it's like a woven blanket, the Twin Cities. And it's small. Those relationships are important. So going back to the personalities that play within the real producers, absolutely, those are friendships. And they are valuable to each other because we learn from each other. We grow with each other. And we infuse business together. That's only a win-win for everybody. That's what I think is so brilliant about it.
Yeah, and it's important to me that I don't monetize our platform that way, because there's already skepticism out there.
Right.
Even these days, I've been running Real Producers in the Twin Cities for 5 years now, and there are still agents that I meet probably every week that I'm referred to them, I reach out to them, I'm not getting replies and things like that. And then inevitably I meet them and the confession comes out. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were something else. But that's not their fault.
Right.
I mean, reality is top performing real estate agents. Earlier today, you said that you have someone on your staff that kind of checks your emails.
Right. It's busy.
The whole reason why he or she has that type of role is because every day there are people after your time, your energy, your money, your influence. And if you cater to all of that stuff, you don't have time to do your job.
Right. And there's no room left in the schedule.
And if your clients see that you're not giving them the attention that they deserve, then you might as well say goodbye.
Right.
It's a very unforgiving industry in that regard. And that's, you're talking about lead generation.
So true.
I'm very familiar with different types of lead generation. People can do a lot of business through lead generation, but
it's a necessary, don't get me wrong. I mean, the world and the industry require that in order to support this business model and help agents grow their business, if that's what they really want, as we that's a whole other segue of the team model and what's going on there. Paid lead generation is a part of that, but it's only a part, just a sliver. The organic component of it, the human relationship component of it, is what I'm hoping will not be lost in translation. I call it the youngification of our marketplace.
Because of the social media stuff.
Because of the social media and the real reliance on the phone, the texting behind the screen piece of it, when this work is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And having these conversations and really understanding it, I call it with the team getting into the weeds. Like, do not surface dwell. What is this really about? What does real producers really do? Who are they benefiting? How are they helping in a really positive way? That's where the message needs to go a little deeper so people really understand what that's about and what the benefits are and how amazing that is. That opportunity to bring these people together and be able to network on that level is powerful and empowering and super valuable.
Yeah,
super valuable.
I love that. And it's a lot of the agents I meet, they're not just telling people what they should be doing.
Right.
They're doing it themselves.
Right.
There's a couple of agents that every year they're in the top 500. And I see their stats. And a couple of events ago, one of the agents walked up to me and he said, "Am I still on that list?" And I said, "Yeah, you are." And the reason why he was responding that way is legitimately about 50% of his sales were personal investments.
Right.
You know, he's buying buildings, duplexes, quads, things like that. He's
right.
taking advantage of the market just like he's promoting to his clients.
Right.
And it's cool to see that people aren't just giving advice, you know, they're in it.
Right.
So it's more of a camaraderie, if that makes any
totally
sense.
Totally agree.
Versus you against me, or I hired you to do this because I don't have time to do it. I don't think that relationship part will ever disappear.
Never.
And the reason why I believe that is I remember when Groupon came out and everybody was all excited about Groupon. And I remember
how long ago was that?
in 18 months, they had over $1 billion valuation.
Wow.
And everybody was like, oh gosh, Groupon is the latest and greatest. And when's the last time you heard of somebody bragging about Groupon?
Yeah.
And there's no relationship. There was significant discounts, which kind of wrecked the value proposition of a lot of businesses because people were so used to getting 50% off,
right?
That when there was no Groupon, they were asking. They're like, "Well, I know you guys can give it to me for less," and it's just, gosh, you know, our value is so much higher than that,
right?
So
value. That's a big word in the business.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. The internet's fine, but having an experienced individual look at that through a set of eyes that have seen thousands, maybe tens of thousands of homes,
right?
You will be able to spot things, you know, that no one even thought about. I love it when I find out a realtor sees something that they haven't really been trained to spot,
right?
But they're just so used to it. It's instinct. And they're like, hey, I walk into a property, my eyes are drawn to this, this, and this. And it's that experience that,
it really
people
is.
are looking for.
You have pulled together what I would call the creme brulee. The team, I use that word all the time, the creme brulee of the populace that really understand and bring tremendous value to the people that they're coming into people's lives and effectively changing their path. It's a big deal. I think that the industry under promotes and undervalues the complexity around this work.
Yes.
It is not a transactional job that you're just going out to try to make money in. You are partnering and working alongside and shouldering major life change for people.
Yeah.
And the representation you have in the organization as a real producers as an organization is pulling together an example, a role model, if you will, that is an opportunity to reach one, rather than one-to-one, one-to-many, to share a story and a process on how to do this really, really well.
Yep.
And then if they decide, that audience decides to glom on and follow, then they've had the opportunity to be introduced to this individual or team of people or organization that they can role model after. And I think that is so critical in a time and a pace that's so fast. That's Absolutely. What I think is so cool about it.
You know, one of the things that we have in our platform that helps us grease the wheels, so to speak, is we do a lot of events. And I don't monetize the events. I don't make a dime doing them.
Right.
I do them because it gives me the ability to connect people faster.
Right.
And
the one to many.
And
That's what I call it.
It's not a networking approach. You know, we're not trying to be all things to all people, but we are trying to make personality matches.
Right.
And I meet agents all the time that they haven't even been in the industry 5 years yet.
Right.
But if you look at their stats, they look like a veteran. They just do.
Right.
And there was a gentleman that I met, it's probably been 3.5 years ago now. But he had graduated college, got into real estate. He was 2 years in, and he had just passed 14 million.
That's amazing.
And
Good for him.
I was like, we have a section in the publication where we honor people that fit that criteria. We call it Realtor on the Rise.
Right. I've seen it.
I had put together an article on him, and I thought, I wish him well, and maybe next year we're going to do 17 million.
Right.
No, the following year he jumped to over 40 million.
Yeah. Amazing.
And the year after that, he was over 60 million.
Really impressive.
And it blows my mind because there are people that are in this decades and they don't even come close to that.
Right.
But here's somebody who doesn't even know where the exit is in the building yet.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, like this? Boom. And
because it's organic in them.
it is.
They're hardwired.
Well, and this particular individual, he knew his age group was mostly interested in, first-time home buyers, and rather than approaching that angle like that, he just said, listen, have you ever thought about your first property being an investment property?
Right.
Let's buy a duplex, live in half, and let's take your cost of living down, and let's just make some good decisions. Well, he ran with that. And that particular year that he jumped to 40, he legitimately sold more duplexes and quads than every other agent in the state by more than double.
Because he focused on that.
Right.
It's all in where you put your energy and how you focus your energy.
100%.
And those that really choose to be mindful and put a plan together that makes sense and has, what's brilliant about me, not to go off on a tangent on multifamily, but for young people, it's brilliant in the fact that they're building wealth. They are able to pour in, as an owner occupy, they're delving into something that has more value and will build more value over time. And they're able to take the equity off of that and then continue to build an investment portfolio off of it. It's brilliant. So he's honing into something that's very centric and specific, and is able to elevate their lifestyle experience because they probably were looking at something for $200,000 to $300,000, based on the mortgage payment, and they are able to offset their mortgage with that rental component, and they're living a much better life.
Yeah.
With a wealth opportunity. Brilliant.
Times
a million. Like anybody could take a model like that and hone into a specific criteria or populace of people, and then just do that and do it super, super like off the charts well. I think that's great.
Another Tony Robbins quote, where focus goes, energy flows. And it's
totally
this is what I love about real producers is I always say success leaves clues. And I just know so many average people, that do big things. And it has nothing to do with their education,
right,
their attention span.
Right.
It's just they found somebody, they modeled that person.
They modeled the person.
And they weren't surprised that the results were similar.
Yeah.
And I think that's great advice for anybody, because
absolutely,
there are a lot of people that get into real estate just assuming, and for me, kind of the same thing. It's like, well, I like people. I'm not scared of numbers. I should just get my real estate license.
I hear that so often. I should just get my real estate license. And there's so much more to it than.
And you think it's automatic. For me, I thought, well, I know a lot of people. So once they find out I've got a license, we're golden, right? No,
it doesn't work that way.
All of a sudden, the second I got my license, a lot of people that knew me became very skeptical of having conversations with me. They're like, oh, he's just being nice.
He's going to want to sell me a house.
Yeah, right. Which is true. I did want to sell them a house, but at the same time, nobody wants their relationships to be all business all the time.
Right.
And it was very difficult for me to figure out how do I include the two, but also separate them. You know, I have to generate business somehow.
Right.
And, you know, to this day, the most effective part that I've learned about successful agents has been revolving around relationship-based activity.
Right.
Either building relationships with new people or maintaining relationships they have with people that, you know, maybe it's been 15 years since you sold them a house, but
right.
it doesn't mean you're not going to stay in touch.
Absolutely not. They're your most valuable peeps in your life.
I'll use a great example. There's an agent I know pretty well that sells a lot in North Oaks. Mm-hmm. And it's probably been about 8 or 9 years since this happened, but she found out there were over 500 families that lived in North Oaks, had been living in North Oaks for longer than 4 decades.
Right.
That's a pretty significant stat.
It's a huge number.
So she decided to, at North Oaks Golf Club, she rented that out, and she invited all of these families to come out to the golf club. You know, had a meal, just kind of a little North Oaks reunion. Mm-hmm. You know, what do we have in common? We've all been here a long time.
Yeah.
She had a replica of the street sign, of the streets that they lived on. She gave a street sign to everybody that was there.
Oh, wow.
And probably not an inexpensive gift, because over 400 families showed up to this thing. So when she was putting this together, I was like, cool, you know, I'll participate. I sponsored it a little bit. Yeah. And I was doing the math, and I was just like, gosh, she probably invested a lot of money doing this thing for 400 people, which a percentage of them are probably strangers, right?
Right.
And I had realtors come up to me in kind of gossip mode, and they're like, oh, she's crazy. Why would you ever Chad, why would you ever invest that kind of, I was doing the math. She probably spent $10,000, $20,000 doing that. That's crazy. She's crazy. Why would you do that? And my response to this day is always the same. What a smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. To do a positive, caring, loving event with no expectation
right.
of getting something out of it.
Right.
Let's do the math, right? 400 families that we know have lived in that area for longer than 4 decades.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil the thing, but some of them are probably on their end game, whether they like it or not.
Right.
They're going to be selling their house within the next 10, 15 years.
Correct.
And who do you think they're going to think about when it's time to sell their house?
For sure.
The person that has got all the ads in their face, that's knocking on their door, asking them every time they see them, do you want to sell your house? Do you want to sell your house?
Exactly.
Or the person that was nice to them when they weren't even looking. That's a different emotion. And it's, I just think it's a genius move. I'm not saying realtors need to do these events just to build or maintain a relationship with people, but it gets noticed.
Absolutely, it gets noticed.
And people always remember how you make them feel.
Well, it's the difference between being a part of something that you're expecting, an entry with a huge financial outcome, without understanding and respecting. That's not the focus at all when you're in this business. Obviously, you're in the business to make an income,
right?
But that's not at the forefront. It's the cultivating and nurturing of friendships and relationships that you meet every single day, whether it's I always say at the gas station or at the grocery store, at the hair salon, or at some beautiful event where you've been given an opportunity to meet a whole entourage of agents that you've never met before. And you learn, I always say to the team, you learn a nugget. You'll learn something that, motivates you, changes mindset, all those things. That's where all the energy and time should be spent.
Absolutely.
And I think that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
I had a text conversation a couple nights ago with an agent that finished last year almost at 100 million. And he's not a team. He's not a mega team or anything
Impressive.
Like that. And he doesn't self-promote. Like you never see ads, billboards, anything like that.
Right.
Just completely under the radar. And we ended the conversation by saying,
really impressive.
This is what I said to him. I said, the agent that helps the most people wins, always wins. And he said amen to that, because it's true. You know, all of the most successful agents I've met were not raised to become top performing realtors.
Right.
In fact, to this day, I've met 2 people that went to school for real estate.
Yeah.
That got into real estate.
Right.
Everybody else, it's like, you know, I was a garbage man, or I was a photographer, or, you know, music management. It's just one day they decided, I think I can do this.
Right.
And it was probably based on the perception of somebody they knew that was doing it. And they're like, gosh, I think I could do it better than him or better than her. You know? And they find out the hard way that that's not always the case. But I've always been interested in being connected to a culture where the people that are the most resourceful, the people that are the nicest, the people that are the most helpful,
Right.
they're the ones that are winning. They're the ones that are being praised, not because they wrote a check and said, hey, say nice things about me.
Right.
No.
Absolutely.
That would wreck the authenticity of what it is.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason why we don't let real estate agents advertise in our platform, is it would wreck the authenticity of the culture and what we've built. So our events, we do them because it does grease the wheels. It does give us the ability to strategically introduce people to each other. And that's the joy I get out of it. You know, like when you're doing deals with homes, you know, connecting them to people, filling in the blanks. It's like, hey, we're going to drag this across the finish line. No problem, no stress. I enjoy being part of that equation.
Right.
I'll meet somebody and they'll say, well, here's a real example. There was somebody about 5 months ago that I just asked them, I said, is there a particular agent that you want to meet? And they mentioned the name of an agent. And I smirked and I said, have you tried to reach this agent? And he said, all the time. Chad,
Right.
I send them texts. I send them emails. I've left them voicemails. And I said, well, do you ever get a call back? And they said, no, never gotten a call back. And I said, well, don't take that personally, because you'll appreciate this. I know for a fact they don't check their emails. I said, they're very busy. I said, do you really want to meet this person? And they said, yes. And I can't guarantee this with everybody, but ironically, this is an agent that I've met plenty of times. And I just sent them a text and I said, hey, let's have lunch. What are you doing Friday? And they replied right away. They're like, let's do it, lunch. I said, great. So I took those people out to lunch, and they've been besties ever since. Now, could I have predicted that? No. But when I introduced them, I didn't introduce them as, this one's a realtor, this one does something else.
Yeah.
I introduced them based on things I knew they had in common growing up.
Right.
And that's all the conversation was about. It
Right.
had nothing to do with real estate. So I love filling in the blanks for people.
That's brilliant. That is my favorite part of this business. I was just having this discussion with a client who's a friend of mine the other day. I'm like, I have a venue that I would love to do this at, actually in December. I have all these women I know. They don't know each other, but they're all amazing women. So why not put a dinner together and bring them all together so they can meet one another? Oh my gosh, it'd be brilliant. And like, oh, I would love to do that. So I texted 5 of these friends, clients, mentors. I would love to do that. None of them know each other. The amount of networking and empowerment and just good juju, I call it, that you get out of those moments, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
That, my friends, is what Chad Jeske does with Real Producers. He is a networker and he puts people together.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I love doing it, and it's a lot of fun. And helping people. I mean, think about it, right? Some of the events that I do are 30 to 50 agents. Some of them are 300 to 500 agents. And when I started putting together really large events, one of the first things that went through my head was, it would be a shame to have this many people running around in a good mood and not promote some type of nonprofit.
Right.
And
great.
Now that's kind of become a must with our events, is like, if you're going to gather people, why not figure out a way to help even more people.
100%
rather
agree.
than just the people that are in that room.
Love it.
And there are a lot of agents that are passionate about specific nonprofits. So we can move things around and impact a lot of different groups.
I love that.
But
Yeah.
I really enjoy the side benefits of that. And we're not just connecting people,
Right.
but we're creating opportunities for them to cast a wider net.
And help
with
more
gratitude.
people.
Yeah.
Everything we do, we try to partner with a nonprofit. Like we're dating this, but Thanksgiving's coming up. So we do a pie giveaway and we give pies to all of our clients in our sphere, and we have them come to a venue. In this case this year, it'll be Sunnyside Gardens. It's central of the city, Linden Hills, fabulous venue. Love it. I love the owners. I love the place. Just love everything about it. And we're going to partner with a fundraising effort and food drive at the same time. So then we went to management over at our office at 50th in France and said, hey, office, does everybody want to participate? So we extended it for 1 week. So everything we're doing is a part of, yes, we're giving, pies away, month of thankfulness, but also creating a food drive around it. I think if everybody could play that out and contribute in that way on all efforts that they do when they're bringing people together, what an amazing thing is that. Yeah. I think that's brilliant.
It's not just a multiplier. You are literally training the kids that are watching this happen.
Right.
Like, this is what you do. This is how you...
And they need to know that.
Yeah. No, they need to know how to give.
They need to know how to give because we are, beautiful. I call it the youngification of our marketplace in an amazing way. I mean, I know so many amazing, brilliant young people, but also at the same time, putting them into a position where they can go to an experience like yours and learn from people who have a success story, right? That they can, as you said, skip some, I won't make that mistake. I'll just leap over this. And then, it's a domino effect, right?
Right.
And how fast can that domino run go? So I love those success stories where you hear the 2-year, 3-year, 5-year in, and they're just power playing through it and they're just winning it all day long. I think that's so awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
cool.
You never know whose heart's going to be touched by whatever it is. Sometimes, like the awards event,
right?
The awards event, we attached it to a nonprofit, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, I hope we can raise $5,000 for this because I'm not charging for things automatically. And it was kind of loosely promoted, all this other stuff. But again, you never know who's going to see it, who's going to be emotionally connected to whatever it is.
Right.
So as we were preparing for that event, I was stressing out a little bit, like, gosh, we're gonna have all these people. I hope we can raise like $3,000 or $5,000. And
right, you probably blew right through that.
Well, there was somebody that reached out and they said, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, this is a nonprofit that helps veterans, homeless veterans." And she said, I had a brother that passed away. He would have loved this nonprofit. I said, okay. And she said, when he passed away, we raised a bunch of money and we kind of been trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. I said, well, okay. And she ended up writing a check for over $10,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
And somebody in her office
matched it,
saw her do that and said, well, I'll do whatever they're doing. So my little,
that's
hey,
amazing.
I hope we can raise $5,000 was just blown out of the water.
That's awesome.
And I see things like that happen all the time.
Every day.
And I'm not given permission to talk about it because a lot of the givers, it's the same thing every time.
They want to be anonymous. And
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the humbleness. It's the modesty. I know an agent that went to his child's school and he was giving them money because of the lunch program. He's like, oh, hey, there's an invoice. I got to put money in this account. I'm here to do that. And,
right.
And while he was there, he's like, what's that stack you got there on the desk? And the person replied, they said, well, these are all the invoices, all the kids. And he started to dig a little bit. He's like, well, have some of them been sitting there a while? What are these balances all about? And he kept thinking about, gosh, how many of these kids aren't eating because
Right.
this stack is sitting here.
Right.
So before he left, he said, add that up. Add that up. They gave him a total.
Yeah.
And I won't give you the exact amount, but let's just say it was
That's small.
it was tens of thousands of dollars when everything was in. The reason why it was that much is he paid that off and he put padding onto it. Like, hey, let's put some other stuff in here,
Right.
so they can look forward to that. And he just
Brilliant.
said,
Wow.
he said, I'm going to do this, but you're not allowed to tell anybody I did this. Which is kind of weird because he told me.
Right.
But,
yeah. Well, when you're friends, you share, but they don't want to make it public.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, because the vultures come out and it changes expectations.
Yeah. What happens when you do that, you know, people want to be able to contribute without it being perceived as an ulterior motive,
Yes.
I guess is what I'll say. So in part, albeit they so much deserve kudos for that graciousness, right? The confidentiality comes with, you know, the aptitude for not being viewed a certain way and just wanting to give.
Yep.
And with no strings attached. Giving with no strings attached.
Exactly. And honestly, the way it makes you feel, the adrenaline, leading with gratitude, it's so intense when you do it that way.
Totally agree.
And it's, I don't know. I love that part of the culture. And I know it's not across the board with every top performer I've ever met, but it's contagious.
Yeah.
A lot of them learn how to do that by
Right.
watching their peers
Right.
do it right in front of them.
Absolutely. Some of the best ideas on contribution come from that learning through watching others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And doing it when it's not expected, right? I mean, you know, so Thanksgiving's coming up and around the holidays, people, they start getting involved in different things. Doing that when it's not normally happening,
Right.
it's noticed a lot more. And I'm not going to say it feels better or worse.
Right.
But,
Right.
I always watch for that. You know, it's just like these different patterns that people get into. And it's going back to what I said a little bit earlier, the person who helps the most families wins. They always win. And it's for me, I never thought I was going to be able to have a job helping people and earning a living
And
doing
that's
that.
what you're doing.
And that's kind of
That's so cool.
That's the spine behind the business is who are you helping? Well, we're helping the realtors go further faster. We're helping vendors that struggle building or maintaining a relationship with realtors, which they're dependent on.
Right.
And for them, you know, a lot of them aren't new to their business. You know,
Right.
the lenders, the inspectors, there might have been a time that it's like, well, Chad, I'll just make more phone calls. I'll
Right.
just stay up later. I'll work more hours and then I'll take care of it. You know, you throw kids and grandkids in there, you can't burn the midnight oil the way you used to. So people are trying to be more intentional with their time, be more efficient. And the way to do that as a vendor is rather than spray and pray, like, oh, well, these 100 people have a real estate license.
Right.
I'm going to try and meet all of them and say happy birthday to all of them and take them all out to lunch. Well, gosh, that's pretty expensive. Doesn't it make more, rather than getting 100% of the dozen sales that come from that group, what if you were to get 15% of the sales from a small group? I call it a concentrated lead. You know, somebody that, so last year, the average agent in the top 500 had 62 transactions, 27 million in volume.
Right.
And what's interesting about that is 62 transactions. Okay. So if I'm a lender and I'm trying to meet people with a real estate license, that's great. But the average person with a real estate license won't sell a house this year.
Right.
And they didn't sell one last year
Right.
either. And
Right.
a lot of people would argue kind of a good time to sell a house.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of people that they're like, Chad, these 100 people, I'm gonna work on them. Well, again, a group of 100 people maxing out at maybe 50 transactions across the board, and that's
Right.
being generous, to be
Right.
honest.
Right.
Versus, Chad, I have a relationship with 5 people that each kick out 50 plus transactions a year, and I don't get 100% of that business. I get 10% or 15% when I'm a match
Right.
for that client.
Right.
But 15% of that is a lot more profitable, a lot more efficient, a lot less stressful
Right.
than getting 100% of what those 100 people put together.
Right.
So it's business common sense
Very
as far as
cool.
I'm concerned.
What I love about the story today, Chad, with you is you've been able to deep dive in a way that really dissects the why behind the commitment you've made to Real Producers, not only as an organization in the Twin Cities, as franchised now, but as a publication featuring stories that will help relay what I believe this industry lacks, which is the fundamentals behind why we love what we do so much and the contribution in learning how to work together collaboratively as a team, as a really organization of brokers and agents in the Twin Cities, and how we can help all of the people around us, regardless of where they're from, regardless what they do. There is plenty of opportunity for everybody out there.
Absolutely.
And you're connecting those dots in a beautiful way.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Very cool.
And I always tell people, if the realtors didn't like it, I'm curious why they keep going to my events.
Right.
Why do they keep nominating people? Why do they introduce me to people and things like that?
Right.
I always say, if it's important to the agents, it's important to me. You know, I don't handle anything negative or political, but I'm interested in helping them first and foremost. And I always say the vendors, you know, our sponsors, it's like, well, why do they like it? Because the realtors like it.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's it. If the realtors didn't like it, what vendor would care about any of it?
That pretty much sums it up right there.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do at least a couple more of these because there is so much meat to the conversation. We could go down so many rabbit holes. It's not even funny. So Chad Jeske,
Yes.
Real Producers, brilliant concept, brilliant platform, brilliant work. Thank you so much for being here. We're absolutely going to have you on again.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
I'll make sure I wear overalls next time because you're probably going to put me to work on some of those projects we were talking about.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of them out here. Chad Jeske, everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.